On UpFront today, we'll debate Britain's Brexit chaos. Has the whole thing been a huge mistake? But first, the US Congress has voted to end US involvement in the Yemen war. But will President Donald Trump allow the conflict to keep going with a veto? Earlier, I spoke to Yemen's Nobel Peace Prize laureate Tawakkol Karman, who has a message for Trump. She's this week's headliner. Tawakkol Karman, thank you for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you.
When you won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011, you were the first Arab woman to do so. At the age of 32, you were one of the youngest ever Nobel Peace Laureates. What is it like today to be a Nobel Peace Laureate from a country, Yemen, that has been torn apart by war and conflict for so many years?
It's really hard. It's really hard for me as a Nobel Peace Laureate and also as one of the leaders of the peaceful revolution. It's really hard for all Yemeni people who sacrificed peacefully and made that great revolution peacefully and entered to the transitional period peacefully. But we are not the one who caused this war. We are not the one who caused this chaos. This chaos and war is waged by the counter-revolution led by Saudi and Emirates and Iran.
Who, in your view, is at the top of the list in terms of taking responsibility for the catastrophe in Yemen?
We can blame all of them. But the most important party or part of this conflict, I blame the Saudi and UAE because they are behind the militia coup. You can't imagine that the one who encouraged Houthi militia before Iranian interfere or announcing that they are supporting Houthis is the Saudi and Emirates. They thought that they can encourage Houthi to make the coup against the transitional authority so they will be able to destroy Yemen and also to stop the ongoing movement to democracy. So they made revenge against Yemeni people who made their peaceful revolution against their ally, against Ali Abdullah Saleh, the former president. The same thing that they did in Egypt, in Libya. So they are the one who behind the coup. So they finance it, and also now they are the one who destroying Yemen and who doesn't want Yemen to succeed. They want Yemen to stay as a failure country, so they will be able to continue their occupation and hegemony in Yemen.
So when I interviewed you last on this show 4 years ago, you were quite reluctant to criticize Saudi Arabia back then with regard to Yemen. At the time, you were saying to journalists, quote, the majority of Yemenis, you said, support the Saudi-led military intervention. Since then, you seem to have done this kind of U-turn. Now you're saying Saudi Arabia is to blame for the humanitarian suffering. Now you're calling Saudi Arabia and the UAE occupiers. You called them stupid fools recently in an address. What made you change your mind on Saudi Arabia?
Look, it was really that most of Yemenis doesn't want to criticize the Saudi interfere in the beginning of their interfering, because they announced that they came to face the militia coup and they are pretending to return the legitimacy to the country. So that was the scene at that time. I didn't publicly support Saudi intervention in Yemen. Absolutely I don't, and I won't, because their policy in Yemen that Yemen should be weak. That is the only way that Saudi will be strong. So I didn't, I didn't support them, but also I was calling the international community to be responsible and to fulfill in their supporting Yemen and also on implementing the Security Council resolutions. Because what happened in Yemen, also not just the result of Saudi, Emirates and Iran, it's also because of the complicity from the international community. They sponsored the GCC initiative, but they let also Houthis to enter to Yemen and they didn't make anything. And also until now, they support Saudi and Emirates, selling them the weapons and killing Yemenis while they don't do any real effort to stop this war.
Your critics say, well, Tawakkol Karman is criticizing Saudi Arabia now, but they point to leaked cables that show that you said to the Saudis, you're our natural allies, you were calling for Saudi support in private. That's what your critics say.
Yes, and I still call for that. They are our neighbor. They should be the allies of Yemenis, and they should change their policy and their bad view to Yemenis. So Yemen is the national security of all the region and all the world. So any collapsing, any destroying Yemen, if it will be real failed country, that will collapse the regional security and also the international security. So yes, I'm calling Saudi, I'm calling Oman, I'm calling all the region, I'm calling US, I'm calling all that. They should be with Yemen. They should deal with Yemen as a ally, not as an enemy.
If you could send a message directly to Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, who has been a driving force behind this war from the very beginning, as crown prince, as defense minister, what would you say to him?
I will tell him that he is a criminal. I will not ask anything from Mohammed bin Salman because he's destroying my country. Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed, they should be trialed in the International Criminal Court because they are committed to the war crimes in my country.
Last year, you referred to Saudi Arabia and the UAE as having a very ugly occupation and uglier influence in Yemen. Shortly afterwards, you were suspended from Al-Islah, the Yemeni political party that you were part of, that's been allied with President Hadi at one point, that is often described in the West as a Muslim Brotherhood party. Is that the reason you were suspended from that party, because you criticized the Saudis? Are you still a member of that party?
Yes, they tried to suspend me and to freeze my membership, but I told them, who frees whom? Because their decision is being kidnapped by the Saudi. Our president also is kidnapped by the Saudi. So all political decision in Yemen, even if it's with the presidential level or with the parties, is kidnapped by Saudi. And the most important thing for us as a Yemeni, if we want to make the peace in Yemen, we should free our political decision.
Given Western governments, like the UK and the US, are supporting and arming the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, are they also, quote, stupid fools who are among those responsible for the suffering in your country? You've called Saudi and the UAE stupid fools. What about their Western backers?
They are so stupid fools, by the way. Either they are stupid fools or they are conspiring with them. So they are participating in killing Yemenis.
The US and the UK?
Of course. US and UK participating in killing Yemenis or any other countries that's selling weapons to Saudi and Emirates, or also any other countries that support Iran to send or export weapons to Houthis. So, and they really, US and UK should stop their selling weapons to Saudi and Emirates for many reasons. First is because of the humanitarian issue. Yemeni people being killed, Yemen now under the famine because of this ugly war, and also because of the security of the world. If they are really concerned about the peace and the security around the world, they should stop this war, because this war will collapsing Yemen in a very important geopolitics place, and that will increase rebellions, terrorists, poverty, refugees, etc., etc. So what is the, I think that they don't think in a good way, not just in Yemen, by the way. They are allying with the dictators in Arab Spring countries. And that is the big mistake that the West is committed. So allying with the dictators, that means that you are destroying the safety and the security around the world.
You say they should stop the war. Bruce Riedel, a former CIA officer and Middle East expert, he said, if the United States of America and the United Kingdom tonight told King Salman of Saudi Arabia that this war has to end, it would end tomorrow. Do you agree with him?
Of course, I agree with this. But unfortunately, most of the countries, especially US and UK, they put the interest above their values.
Yeah.
But also with that, they are wrong. because they should know that they should make allies with the people, not with the dictators. The dictators will go today, tomorrow, after 1 month, 1 year, 2 years. But the people who are dreaming for freedom and sacrificing for democracy, they should be the one who make allies with them.
So Donald Trump, President of the United States, soon may have a bill, a law on his desk that he can either sign or veto, which would end US involvement in the Yemen war. A group of bipartisan senators, Democrats, Republicans, have helped pass a bill through the House and the Senate to stop US involvement. Some say he might veto that bill because he's so close to Saudi Arabia. What's your message to Donald Trump?
My message to President Trump, you are looking for accomplishment in your presidency period. This accomplishment will be really if you stop the war in Yemen. And that is very important, and you are the one who can do it. So I'm calling him to stop the war in Yemen. He can do it more than making the nuclear agreement with the North Korea.
But the Trump administration itself isn't so keen on stopping the war. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said that the Houthi group in Yemen, the militia, and Iran are to blame for Yemen's humanitarian crisis. He doesn't blame the Saudis. Are you worried that your country is stuck in the middle of some clash between America, Saudi on one side, Iran on the other?
Yemen under the proxy war. This is exactly it. And also Saudi, Emirates, Iran, and the superpowers behind them. But also, I don't want to exclude Houthis, because Houthis are really committed to big crimes in Yemen. They are the same. They are committed to the war crimes in Yemen. They accepted to be the tools, either to be the tools of Saudi and Emirates in the beginning, or then to the Iran.
But if both sides are committing war crimes, which is what human rights groups say, can there ever be justice for ordinary Yemenis? Because at some stage, one of those two sides is going to be in charge of your country.
So I'm calling them Houthis from one side and also Islah from one side. If we really want, as Yemeni, to make solution by ourselves without interfere from outside countries, Houthis and Islah should sit together and decide and to reconciliate and make another step for peace in Yemen.
Okay, and just before we finish, you were a close friend of the murdered Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Do you hold the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, responsible for his killing?
Of course, Mohammed bin Salman is responsible of killing Jamal Khashoggi. He is the highest power in the Saudi, and this kind of crimes will not happen without his permission. And also, I'm not just talking about Jamal Khashoggi. Mohammed bin Salman also committed to another crime to our colleagues, women activists inside the prison of Saudi Arabia. And what make Mohammed bin Salman continue his ruling on killing journalists, torturing women and other activists and religious people inside? Why? Because the absence, or because of the complicity of the world, because of the dark oil money, he buy the silence from the world.
So do you think the international community, Western governments, will ever be able to get justice for Jamal, given a lot of them are in bed with the Crown Prince?
They should. If they didn't make justice for Jamal, that will send a very bad message to the dictators in our region and all around the world, but especially in our region, to continue their brutality. Look, with all this darkness, you should that we are facing a counter-revolution, and that is part of any path of people for freedom and for democracy. We suffered from decades of brutality of dictators, and we are now paying the price of freedom. So all these counter-revolutions countries will stop their conspiracy one day. And now, what you see now in Algeria, in Sudan, it's the victory of people, the re-emerging of Arab Spring, and that means that we will not give up our dream, our sacrifice, and our will to achieve our freedom and democracy.
Tawakkol Karman, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you.
3 times British Prime Minister Theresa May has asked the UK Parliament to approve her deal to get Britain out of the European Union. 3 times MPs from all sides rejected her.
She even promised to resign if they backed her, but they still didn't. Despite an extension, Britain is still on course to crash out of the European Union with no deal. Nearly 3 years on from a controversial referendum, the country is bitterly divided and the economy has already taken a massive hit. Is it any wonder then that Brexit has been called the UK's biggest political crisis since World War II? And is it time to recognise the Brexit referendum as a catastrophic mistake? Joining me to debate this are Femi Aluwale, an anti-Brexit campaigner and co-founder of the pro-EU group Our Future, Our Choice, and Claire Fox, director of the think tank Academy of Ideas, who's called Brexit a fantastic moment for popular sovereignty. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. Claire, let me start with you.
Good to be here.
Given all the chaos that we're seeing inside of the UK Parliament, given the chaos we're seeing on the streets outside of the UK Parliament, given the way in which Britain has become a little bit of a laughingstock in the eyes of many around the world, is it time to say the Brexit referendum and the whole process that it ensued was a mistake?
The whole Brexit process has proven to be somewhat traumatic, but I can't emphasise enough to viewers how exciting and brilliant it was that the Brexit vote happened in the first place. And I think the chaos that's ensued is because of a major democratic crisis, which is that the elected parliamentarians in the House of Commons disagree with the electorate, and so consequently you've got this huge clash of a majority of people who voted to leave the European Union, were politicised, mobilised, and took that opportunity to, strike a blow for sovereignty. And the chaos that's happened since has been because the establishment has done absolutely everything it can to thwart that democratic mandate.
Femi, it's not Brexit's fault. It's not the fault of Brexit. It's the fault of elected representatives going against the people.
Well, the problem we've got is, the reason why it's such a mess is, we took a 52% rejection of our relationship with the EU as if that was somehow a 52% approval for whatever alternate relationship they decided to negotiate after that. What happened in 2016 was we voted to leave the EU, but that effectively signed a blank check as to what our future relationship with the EU was going to be. Now, that could have been 1,000 different things. Right now, we've negotiated a deal that most Brexit voters do not like. So you have the 17 million people who voted for Brexit, but they don't like the Brexit deal that we've just negotiated. That's because it was completely undefined in 2016, and that's why Parliament is stuck.
See, the thing is that the confusion that Femi's referred to, which is to say we didn't know what kind of a relationship we'd have with the EU, the idea was that we would sever a formal relationship with the EU by leaving. And subsequent to that, there has been a huge amount of machinations and all sorts of technocratic ploys to kind of ensure that that relationship would carry on for big business, for all the different interested parties in the UK who actually didn't approve of the vote. So here we are in a situation
where the idea that
where
people voted to sever all ties with the European Union is simply not true. In 2016, yes, many of the people on the Remain side of the argument said that we'd be leaving the single market, the customs union. That's basically the trade policy of the EU and the regulations of the EU. But the people on the Leave side, they're the ones who said we'd keep all the same access that we currently have to our European market. But they're right now saying that we'd be losing them. It's a complete bait and switch. It's a con.
Femi,
that's what we're in right now.
No, Femi, you see, the thing is that there doesn't appear to be any major switch in terms of how voters voted. I mean, you're making it sound as though everybody who voted to leave the EU is having huge regrets. But in fact, all that's happened is that the people who want to stay have kept up this relentless, absolutely hysterical...
Claire, plenty of polls show that people have changed their minds. There was a YouGov poll done at the beginning of this month, which shows that only 48% of people say it was wrong to leave, 41% say it was right to leave. People have changed their mind. It's been 3 years. They've seen this chaos, and they want to change their minds. You won't let them.
If we're going to base it on polls, at the moment, the majority of people in polls are saying that we should leave without a deal. I mean, polling is a mystery art, and the polls got it completely wrong before the referendum.
All right, so if you don't trust polls, how about another referendum?
No, because do you understand? I think that maybe the viewers will get this. You know, if you're told in all seriousness that this is a really important once-in-a-lifetime constitutional vote, that the outsourcing of that decision has been given to you by Parliament to the public. People were mobilised in their millions, the largest turnout ever in British history. If that happens, and then what happens is you're basically disenfranchised, by the way, and along the line, treated as though and talked about as too stupid, people who were not informed, described and demeaned as racists. When those things are thrown at you,
all right, Claire, there
what
have
you're
been
basically
insults on
doing
both
is making
sides,
a
as you
mockery
well
of
know.
democracy.
There have been insults on both sides. That's
I
what's
know,
so bad
but
about
I'm
British politics
explaining-
right now. Let me ask Femi the question. Let me ask Femi the question.
I'm trying to explain what it feels like.
Understood. Let me put that to Femi then. Femi, you've said that another referendum is the only way to reverse this without civil unrest. Claire's making the point that that's pretty insulting to the people who already voted. 17 million people were told it would be a once-in-a-lifetime vote. It would be the final say. And then you come along and say, well, let's do it all again. Where does it end? Won't we just be endlessly rerunning referendums for the next few years?
I do not want, under any circumstances, to rerun the referendum from 2016. That was a terrible referendum. And the reason why it was a terrible referendum was precisely because Brexit had not been defined. We were not told exactly what relationship we were going to have. We have a deal now which takes us out of the European Union, but most people who voted for Brexit do not like
Claire,
it.
what's that?
That's why
Claire,
we're in this
what's
situation.
that old saying,
So
when
we
the
have-
facts
so there-
change, I change my mind. What do you do?
Yes, I don't think the facts have changed. I think what has, something has changed, mind you. Democracy is now in jeopardy. But on this particular deal, Femi and I will agree on how bad it is. And most people who voted Leave thought that and believed that there would be negotiations in good faith. Now people don't think that's what's happened.
Hold on, what do you want to see happen, Claire? Just for the sake of our viewers around the world who are struggling to follow no deal, deal, indicative vote, customs union, backstops, 2.0, what do you want to see happen?
At this stage, although I wouldn't have said this before, but at this stage, because as we've been told by the MPs totally all the way through, that it's, you know, a no deal is better than a bad deal. This is a bad deal. I would like no deal. One of the things we've learned from this whole process is that many Leave voters did not do this for economic gain. They actually did it on a point of principle about self-determination, freedom. You know, there are more important things than just the economy.
Femi,
however, Mehdi, you can't get away with that little slur there. There was
It's not a
concern
slur.
about immigration.
Lots of people said immigration was a major factor in their voting decision. That is a fact, Claire. That is not a slur.
Anti-immigration or concern about immigration is not anti-immigrant, and confusing those two things would be misleading.
Okay, we'll have to
I think
agree to
actually
disagree
lots
on
of
that.
Remain politicians
we'll
here
get you back
believe
to have that a debate
there is
another day.
not an outbreak of racism in this
I
country.
didn't say that, you said that.
So
Femi,
there is not
let
an
me ask
outbreak
you, what
of
is your
racism.
solution right
So
now?
let-
If you could wave a magic wand, what is your solution to this undeniable crisis in the UK right now? Claire says walk away, it'll be fine.
I'd say that right now that Brexit has fundamentally changed. The two things people wanted, more control over their country and to be better off. We have no deal, which would turn us into the only major economy in the world that doesn't have a trade deal with its closest neighbors, or we have this deal, which would mean we'd have substantially and objectively less control over our country than EU members, given that Brexit does not match up at all with the promises that were made in 2016 and has fundamentally changed. There's only the most democratic and logical thing
Femi.
that the people get to judge which one they prefer, or whether or not they'd want to scrap the whole thing and remain in the European Union. That is the most democratic way forward, because the alternative is to say that people do not get to judge the outcome of this process.
Let Claire respond.
Okay, the thing that is extraordinary, and maybe people outside the UK don't realise this, is that the campaigners for a second referendum, the people's vote, the take it back to the people, are all people who have campaigned to remain within the UK, within the EU. So, you know, it is interesting that the only campaigners around having a people's vote are the people who want to overturn. Are you seriously, Femi, please don't tell fibs.
So, one of the co-founders of my organisation, Our Future, Our Choice, voted Leave. It is because Brexit has been such a disaster that he has realised that we need to change direction drastically. So one of the co-founders of the people that are calling for this referendum, for a new referendum, voted Leave.
Claire, let me ask you this question. You said a while ago that you are adamant that another referendum would be anti-democratic. How does that work? How is only the 2016 referendum the only example of democracy in the UK? Not general elections, not another referendum. Why is that one referendum the only democratic truth?
Yeah, no, it's a very important question. Because of the way the referendum was posed, and remember the electorate did not call the referendum, the politicians did, they made it very clear that this was a definitive decision and that they were actually asking voters to make that decision. They told us that this would have to happen. But what you can't do is you can't overturn a referendum result before it's actually been enacted, because if you do that, you destroy trust in politicians. The other thing is, by the way, both mainstream political parties are practically at civil war over this. There's splits in the mainstream. This is, as you'll know, an international phenomena, which is that there is a growing gap and a kind of running out of steam of the technocratic elites all over the place.
Femi, do you
and
disagree
in
with
many
that?
instances, this is one of the many rebellions against the establishment.
Well, firstly, yes, I'd agree that the politicians are in absolute disarray. It's been utter chaos for the past 2 years. But the idea that this is the people versus the establishment, just put yourself in the mind of somebody who is in that parliament right now. They know that 52% of the population voted to leave the EU, largely on the basis of having more control over their country and being better off. They just negotiated a deal that means we give up our say in Brussels, we no longer have representation in the EU, yet we're still bound by those rules anyway, meaning we end up with less control than EU members, and the alternative being no deal, which, as I said, is economic catastrophe.
Hold on, we have to wrap up.
The amount of government resources that has gone on in this Brexit thing, and the fact that we'll have to spend the next 5 years negotiating the actual trade deal, that will mean that all those issues, those things that people were really, really upset about in 2016, they will simply not be addressed, and that is the tragedy of Brexit. The only way we come together is if we focus on the things that we all care about.
Femi Olawale, Claire Fox, we'll have to leave it there.
We can agree on that.
Thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.